Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Lyssa's Lizards.
I'm Neptune Chameleon,
and we're your reptile girlies. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Back at it again. I feel like that's one of those really old memes. What was it? Back at it again? What was that?
That is not jogging any memories.
It was something. It was some kind of like Vine meme or something.
I'm just thinking like Back to the Future, and I know that's not where you're going.
That's totally not. There was some meme that was like back at it again or something. I forget what it was. I don't know.
Someone listening knows exactly what you're talking about.
Please put it in the comments because I need to know. It's going to drive me crazy.
No idea. But okay,
no clue.
My friend texted me that she had the day off today, and I was like, fantastic, love that for you.
Yeah.
And then she texted me a couple hours later how she went to the hair salon, and then she gets there, and it's closed. But it's not normally supposed to be closed. They closed because of a storm coming through, and then they didn't tell anyone.
Wait, she like had an appointment?
Yes.
And they didn't tell her?
Yes.
They didn't tell anybody?
Correct.
Were there a bunch of people like trying to get in? That's crazy.
Which I feel like is an important thing you should do if you're, which is obviously just like a mishap.
I mean, A, you should call the people that have appointments that are coming in. That's wild. B, at the bare minimum, like put it on Facebook or Instagram or something that you're having to close.
I don't know what they did, but they obviously did not contact people directly.
And also if people are showing up, then obviously the storm wasn't like bad enough for it to be like very obvious that everywhere was closing.
I guess they closed for like today and tomorrow, and the storm's supposed to be coming through. So I think they were being like proactive. I don't know all the details. All I know is that my friend had a hair appointment, showed up, and they were closed. And she's like, dang it, I was so excited to get my hair done.
I would be so pissed.
And you usually have to wait a while for a hair appointment. It's not like something you can just like call up tomorrow.
No.
Like usually with your nails, you can like get them done same day.
You know, that's usually booked out like 2 to 4, maybe even 6 weeks in advance sometimes. That's crazy.
She's like, I might just go to Great Clips.
You know what though? Don't knock that because I actually did that for a long time.
She just needs like a trim. Like her ends are just dead. So it's not anything like fancy.
No,
but
I 100% used to always do that because my hair is just very, very basic. And if I can't do layers because my hair is so naturally thin that if I do layers, I'll have no hair. And so I like have to just do like straight across. So I would go and pay like...
Yeah, that's pretty standard.
Yeah, I would pay $20 at Great Clips and be like, just chop it. Now I actually have like a legit hair guy who I'm obsessed with, but
no, I always have to get layers, so then like the curls lay nicely and everything. But anyway, so that happened to her this morning, so
I would have been severely pissed off.
I can say my day's going better than that.
A hell of a lot better than hers, so it's a good Tuesday for us.
It is podcast
not for your friend.
Day. Very excited for that, but you're leading this one. What is today's juicy topic?
This one is one that we have been wanting to talk about for a while, and in fact we actually technically recorded it before.
Yes.
And had some technical difficulties.
Correct.
So.
And we lost the entire episode.
The whole episode. So, this is a little bit of a redo, but it's been like what? Like 3 or 4 months? Like it's been a while.
A lot.
Maybe longer than that. It's been a long time. We were like, you know what? We're just going to table that topic.
It's because it's a lot to like talk about all of it and go through a whole episode and then have to like redo all of that. And you're like, did I say that? I thought I said that, but maybe I didn't say that. But it feels like I said that.
100%. And just so that you guys know, listening, like when we do our episodes, there are some topics that are like a little bit heavier, like a little bit more intense to talk about, and then ones that are just a little bit lighter and fluffier. Yeah. And so we always, based on like whatever we're dealing with, like that week or whatever, we'll like pick and choose the topics kind of, you know, depending on what we can handle. So this one is combating improper husbandry on social media specifically. And this one can be kind of heavy because we know that people can get kind of heated in the comments.
There's a lot that goes into it. But I think it's so incredibly important because I would say, I feel confident saying this, majority of keepers are on social media
these days
to
for
some
sure.
extent. Even if you're just a creeper, like in a Facebook group, you don't actually post anything, but you're like in a group joining.
You're at least in one group,
or you're watching YouTube videos or something. Like I feel like if you're going through research, you're on the internet. If you're on the internet, you end up on a social media platform. That's just kind of
natural progression, right?
Yeah, and because it's the internet, anyone can post whatever they want, both good or bad.
And everybody thinks it's a great idea to vocalize all of their thoughts and opinions, even when they're not great thoughts or opinions.
Right. So we're going to narrow the scope of this particular topic to just that instance when you're scrolling or you're watching a video and you go, and you see something.
You see something real bad.
And you're like,
because we've all seen it. We've all had that moment.
And there's varying degrees of bad.
Major varying. Like,
there's like, you're putting the animal's health at like serious risk. We're not talking about that because that's like a whole nother.
It's a whole other
thing. What we're talking about is specifically like combating improper care. And the care could be like they're using the wrong UVB bulb. Right. Or they're using reptile carpet. Or
they're using calcium sand. They're not using UVB. Like
or their temperature ranges aren't quite right. Or their enclosure size isn't quite right. This isn't necessarily like a life or death situation, but maybe common mistakes or things that you know better and this person either does or doesn't know better. And how do you go about in a constructive way letting them know without like chewing their head off?
Yeah, because that's the important part is we don't want to chew people's heads off because it gets us nowhere.
No.
So it's really interesting. And there's like a lot of different ways that we could address it, but kind of the way we chose to kind of structure this episode and like talk through it is like, what are the circumstances in which you find this type of content, right?
Yeah.
So like there's a few different categories and we'll start with basically it's somebody that you know, either in real life and, you know, it's either on their social media or they're telling you about it or something like that. And how do you handle that?
Yeah, or someone maybe you've been following for a while, right? And you feel like you have like your internet friends, right? You don't have to like know them
like
in person.
You've had conversations, you've been in the DMs, but
you mutually follow each other. Like, how do you go about giving them constructive feedback? Our number one piece of advice is to be nice, right? Like, is to lead with kindness. Yeah. Some other things I had written down was acknowledge that they have good intentions.
That is such a big one because I think at the end of the day, like one of the most important things that you can do is acknowledge that they love that animal and assume. We should all assume that they love that animal, whether or not they know what's best for the animal, whether they or not they've done their research. Like that's all like relevant, but not quite. And so it's, you know, we just have to assume that they want the best for this animal because that's like the number one thing. If I'm ever like leaving comments or anything like that, the number one thing I always do is say like, hey, I can really tell that you love this animal. You know, he's so cute, this and that. Like, just start with like, you know, like compliment sandwich vibe.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you want to say like, hey, I know you really love your gecko. Hopefully I can help. Like, you know, it's in that kind of a framework.
Because a lot of times, and specifically with new keepers, they think they're doing it right. They don't know that they're not doing it right. We see them like, how could you, right? Shouldn't you have known? Or if you had done basic research, you would have come. That's not helpful though. The reality is like they have the animal. We're assuming that they have good intentions and maybe they just got incorrect care information either from the internet or the pet shop or wherever. So assume good intentions and then trying to explain why you're making the recommendations and backing that up with care resources that they can then maybe go off and, you know, look into further. Because if we just say red heat bulbs are bad,
or like, I'm sorry, if any of you have done this, I apologize in advance, but one of my biggest pet peeves is seeing comments that immediately just says, you're doing this wrong, do your research. That is so infuriating to me because I understand, yes, they need to do their research. I
just got like such an ick just hearing you say that.
It drives me insane because it's like, yes, they need to do their research. Like, no shit. Like, duh. Like, obviously they need to do that. But like telling them do your research and not providing any resources, any information, any direction in which to go, who is that helping?
Also, we have to keep in mind we're assuming good intentions. We're assuming they did do some research or they did ask questions and they were told the wrong information. So now, think of it from this perspective. You are a random person on the internet telling someone else, hey, everything that pet store told you, everything your vet told you, everything you read online is wrong.
Like, why are they going to believe the stranger?
You have no credibility.
None.
You have no credibility. So, we lead with kindness and we explain why. Hey, did you know that red heat bulbs are actually da-da-da and white heat bulbs are recommended for this reason? Here's some good resources for you to check out, because you basically have to convince them that whatever they're doing is not the best option and explain why. Just telling them they're wrong. No one likes to be told that you're wrong without giving any. But if you're like, hey, if you run that red light, there's a much higher risk of you getting into a car accident. So maybe it's a good idea that you stop. Like, you're like, oh, well, that makes sense.
That makes a lot of logical sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you for explaining that. Right. If we just take the time to explain, huge. Now, I understand when we're on certain platforms, we may be limited to character counts or comments, or we can't send links. So again, that's why we can just try and point people to additional care resources. Or you personally are not interested in spending all that time educating them. That is not your responsibility. No. But you can, if you feel the need to comment something, point them in the right direction.
Totally. And it's like, just when you see these things, I understand we all get like such like a visceral reaction.
Yeah, because we care about the animal, right? And their health and well-being is at risk. Totally get that.
But it's so important to just send people in the right direction. And, there's so many good resources out there. So like, we need to use those. We need to point people towards those, because like you said, they might have gone to their vet. They might have gone to the pet store. They might have gone to this and this and this. And to them, those are credible resources. They seem super credible. Yep. And so why would they listen to you over anybody else unless you provide the information, the resource, and the detail?
And they're not going to challenge that or question it, because they assume that they're getting the right information. So going back to what you were originally saying, though, of like someone there's a couple instances, right? Someone someone you don't know, and maybe someone who like has a larger following and should know better.
More experienced.
Yes. Yeah. So in the instance of someone I think you can take that to DMs. I think you can just have a one-on-one conversation and approach it very similarly to how we were saying of, hey, like, love to see how so-and-so's doing and like their colors are looking, whatever, right? And then
compliment sandwich.
Yes. And then like, I'm not sure if you've seen like the latest research that's come out that's showing this, or hey, have you tried this, or hey, can you can you tell me why you're deciding to use a red heat bulb? And they're like, oh, well, I'm really nervous about them getting cold at night.
Right.
You're like, oh, did you know that there's actually a benefit to temperatures drops, and like you don't actually need the red light?
No way.
All lights should be off at night.
Wow.
Right. That is a much more constructive, 100%. Beneficial conversation than just being like, don't use red lights.
Well, and also like the whole...
I'm sorry, I'm stuck on it, but I feel like that's a good example.
It totally is. And like the whole purpose of you leaving a comment, right, is to hopefully get through to them, right?
Yes.
Like that's the whole goal. So if you start out combative, if you start out, just throwing things at them and all that, like you're just not going to get anywhere. So you want to try and actually come up with ways of doing this that are actually constructive.
It takes practice.
It does.
You'll see. So in instances where then someone you don't know, right? This is you're scrolling and you stumble across something, and that's harder.
Those are the ones that I think you have to tread even more lightly on, because at least if it's somebody that you know or you've had conversations with, like you may not necessarily have credibility in the sense of like knowing more if they may or may not know that information about you. Yeah. But like they at least know you to an extent, or like on a little bit of a level.
Sure.
When it's a total stranger, like they literally have zero reason to listen to you. Zero.
So what I do is usually read through the comments that are already on there, and I try and get like a vibe check of the person's responses. If they sound like they're open, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Oh my gosh, I had no idea, right? Like, thank you so much. Then you're like, oh, okay, this person's interested in learning. If they're not responding back to comments, if they're being combative in the comments, defending their reasonings, coming across as if like what they're doing is correct. What ends up happening as two people who have bigger accounts is we get tagged in those videos. And so this is like twofold. What do you do when you're like someone who gets tagged in, but then also what do you do if you're not? And so in those instances where there's like no productivity in that, I just don't engage, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to warn you guys right now, if you ever tag me in a video and are like asking me to like educate them or something like that, if their comments are even remotely defensive or combative, I will not participate.
Because odds are we're going to say the exact same thing you're already saying in your comments. And I totally understand the logic in this. Your hope is that if a bigger creator comes in and says it, then they'll believe us.
Right.
They won't, because they've already made up their mind.
And that's where it is crucial for all of us in this little lovely reptile world who see these videos and do these things and comment and try and, do everything for the better good, know when to give up. Know when it's not worth it, because they are not going to change their minds.
And maybe not give up, but say, I've done enough.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Right?
Yeah,
like, I think
sure.
this is just our personalities that we have.
Totally. I'm like, all hope is lost.
And I'm like, you know what? You tried.
There's a little hope. You
tried. You gave it your best effort. That's literally our personalities, like summed up right there.
100%.
But if you go about and say, hey, here's some resources, if that person genuinely wants to learn, they will go and take the initiative. Yes. When I get tagged, people do a fantastic job. They're like, hey, Neptune the Chameleon is a great account to learn more. Be sure to check out her videos.
Yes.
And I'll be like, thanks for the support, or like, happy 100%. To help, or whatever. But there's so many resources, right? Like me coming in and repeating what someone else already said, which is solid advice. Unfortunately, I wish it did have more weight, but it realistically, it doesn't. It doesn't. No matter what your follower count is, it doesn't matter.
No, and it really just comes down to whether or not that person's open about it. And if I'm being totally real, whether or not that person is open about it depends on how people have been treating them in the comments.
Which is why we're saying be nice.
Which is like the
explain
whole
the
point.
Why, share your resources.
Because if they just got bashed from the very first comment, you can bet that they are not going to at all listen to anybody else that's coming out saying, even if somebody does come in and say things in a better, nicer way, they've already been berated.
Right. They're in defense mode, and rightfully so.
And I get it. I mean, I've been there. Like, I totally understand, but you got to start out the right way in order to make any progress here. You know the drill. Another month means another set of great deals from Pangea Reptile.
In honor of the Olympics, they're offering some golden prices for crested geckos, including one of our personal favorites, Dalmatians. We talk about how live plants can be tricky for pests, so if you're in the market for fake plants, this is the time.
And for those of you with a green thumb, tons of isopod species will be on sale looking for a new home in a bioactive enclosure. There are lots of other deals, including Labor Day, over at PangeaReptile.com.
So what do you do in the instance where someone's super experienced or a larger account and they're doing something that you don't agree with or maybe isn't proper care?
This is so hard. I don't even know, to be honest. This one's a rough one.
You treat it the exact same way, is my opinion. You do the same thing. You lead with kindness. You give your explanation, your reasoning why in a supportive, constructive way, and you share resources.
Yep.
That person, just because they have a bigger following, is treated no different than someone who has a smaller following.
You're right. That one is so tricky for me. I have a hard time with that one because it depends. Because me personally, I would probably, if it's somebody who's, much bigger, I'm not really one to like publicly call people out or anything like that.
No.
So for me personally, I would, again, depending on whether or not I know them, if I've even had one conversation with the person, I'll DM them separately and privately to your credit, like exactly what you just said, treat them the same way, depending on like what the relationship is or how you know them. But I'm a DMer. I'm not a public commenter.
Yeah. No, I just commented. So there's a YouTube video that came out today. The person has like 60,000 subscribers on YouTube. They did a video all about the Chameleon kit, the Zoom-in one that's not recommended. And there was something in there. They were like saying that you can like put in natural branches, but they did not mention having to sanitize them or wash them. So based off of my experience, I'm like, the target audience are going to be new keepers.
Yes.
They're not going to know that they need to sanitize their branches. That's common knowledge in the hobby. But if you're new to the hobby, which if you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you're new to the hobby, which is why you bought the kit in the first place. Fantastic video. He just didn't mention that. And I know people are going to be reading these comments, so I did a little compliment sandwich. I was like, fantastic video. Love all the suggestions you made for anyone who bought the kit. For anyone watching, keep in mind that it's important to sanitize your branches. And then I said, like, keep up the great work, right? Because it was really a fantastic video. There was just this little piece of information that I was missing. Like... And not that he said anything wrong. I just know based off of my own comments and experience that like people aren't going to know. And so I'm like, hey.
Yeah, 100%.
For anyone watching, you know, and it wasn't a knock on
No,
him, right?
no.
Like,
it's just like, hey, there was this one little blip of information that you didn't mention, and you know whether or not he knows, you don't even know,
right?
So it's like, it's just like, it honestly, that your comment, in my opinion, was more for the people watching than it was for him.
And that's the other point too. If you're noticing that the person's video, like they're not being receptive, I will sometimes come in and leave a comment for basically anyone who's reading the comment. Like if this person, especially in instances where like the animal is at risk, and I know the person knows better, they're just choosing to do it anyways. Everyone in the comment is telling them how terrible of a person they are, blah blah blah, and I'll make some sort of comment like, for anyone watching, here's the reason why what is being shown is not recommended, because a lot of people are like, oh, the animal police are in the comments, all this.
God. If I get called a reptile vet or a TikTok vet one more time, it's like, that drives me insane.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts.
My comment at that point is not even for the creator.
No.
It is for anyone who's in the comments.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that you can do too.
No, yeah, that's a really good one, because at the end of the day, like if it is somebody who has a platform or has like a bigger account or has, you know, is posting content like that, chances are they may or may not even listen to you. And granted, I mean, I have had people comment on my stuff being like, hey, did you know this and that? I'm like, no, I didn't. That's awesome. So like, it really just depends on the person, and it depends on, you know, but you can usually get a vibe check in the comments before you go out and do that.
For sure. The last thing I know we want to talk about, we're like trying to avoid blanket statements or giving recommendations without taking into consideration someone's like specific setup.
Yep.
The thing I see a lot of times with chameleons is either the type of enclosure or like the UVB bulb. I know you had mentioned some for like other reptiles.
Like a lot of people will just blanket statement, you know, heat mats are bad. Never use heat mats, like this and that. And that's one that it's like, are they the best heating source? Absolutely not. But are they horrible?
If they have no way to put overhead heating because of the type of enclosure that they're using,
then a heat mat's better than nothing.
Yeah.
That reptile still needs heat no matter what. So it's like there's the blanket statements can be really harmful without providing the additional context or the additional resources or information or whatever. So and there's so many. I mean, I could go on and on and on with the blanket statement. Like another one for chameleon is like, no, you should only use screen enclosures. You should never use glass enclosures. Like,
but there's ways to properly use glass enclosures. But someone will see a video of a chameleon in a glass enclosure and immediately respond, be like, your chameleon's going to get an upper respiratory infection because they're in a glass enclosure. That is not a 100% thing. Like, there's no correlation between glass and a URI without there also being temperatures that are too hot, humidity that's too high, all these other factors that would also, in combination, contribute.
Exactly.
So a better way to go about that would be like, hey, just so you know, make sure you're like monitoring your humidity and your temperature, and like, or like, hey, what are your humidity levels in your glass enclosure? I've always had better success with the screen enclosure where I live. Like, you can open it up as a discussion versus just talking at someone. Or you're like, what UVB bulb does my species need? And then you just give a blanket answer. But like, UVB is like so particular on the species, how the enclosure is set up, like the distance,
where it's placed, like all that. There's so many factors.
Yes, and so I would just encourage anyone like who's listening, who feels inspired to respond or to educate. Fantastic. Whenever someone asks me what UVB bulb, I say, how tall is your enclosure?
Right.
Or like, they're like, hey, what supplements do I need? I'm like, what species do you have? What? How often should I be misting? Well, what's your current humidity?
Right.
Because those are all going to be dependent on the answer to that question. Could I give you textbook answers?
Of course.
Absolutely. But if someone's asking for help and you're wanting to provide that one-on-one help for them, then you need that additional care information beyond just like reading off a care sheet.
And I think that kind of contributes to, I think, like one of the last points that we wanted to make, which I know we've probably said before. I know I've certainly said it on social media, but like, just because there are things that are right or wrong in reptile care and reptile keeping, there's not necessarily one way of doing it.
Correct.
And so that kind of goes, you know, pairs with the blanket statements of like, the blanket statements aren't always 110% correct because it all varies. Everybody's care varies a little bit. And like, yes, there is like some things that are like black and white, but there are also so many different circumstances that different enclosures. And we kind of talked about in a recent episode, you know, we were talking about pests and like mealybugs and things like that. And in that episode, we were explaining that, you know, if you're not keeping a naturalistic or a bioactive enclosure, then you're probably not going to deal with pests. And that might be something that somebody has like a serious issue with and they cannot have pests, or they, you know, there's different circumstances. And so I think it's just really important to know and to give our own little blanket statement a little bit of like, don't bash people just because they're doing something slightly different, because it might not necessarily be 110% wrong. It just might not be the best way in the world to do it.
Which is a perfect opportunity to be like, hey,
right,
can you explain why you're doing this? And then they could come through and be like, hey, I really struggle with live plants for whatever reason. I can't keep them alive. This is a perfect opportunity. We're like, hey, have you tried using a plant LED light before?
Right.
Have you tried using these particular plant species for this enclosure type? Because those do really well for this enclosure. That is an education opportunity. Or they come back and they're like, you know what? I'm just not interested in using live plants. That's a valid reason too.
Right.
But if we just come back with like black and white, yes or no, versus asking why and opening up the conversation, then we can see where their challenges are. And if we have that experience to share with them, then you can have that conversation and they're going to be way more receptive.
100%. And like another example that I see of this often is the blanket statement of like, they should all be on loose substrate. It's like, well, some animals might have, you know, neurological issues that cause, you know, an issue with loose substrate. Some might have a handicap and, you know, they're incapable of using loose substrate because they'll eat too much of the dirt because of said handicap. Like, you don't know all the specific situations. So just because they're not doing things like by the book doesn't mean that it's inherently wrong. So I think it's just, that's another thing I just wanted to make sure to bring up. There's more than one ways of doing this. I know that a lot of us have like our ways that we prefer or we think are best, but that doesn't mean that people who aren't doing it how you're doing it are wrong.
But I just want to commend, to wrap this up, anyone who is taking the time to comment on a video or try and educate a new keeper, or have them be like, hey, just DM me and I'd be happy to help you out.
I
or
love
like
those comments.
Going back and forth in the comments, or like, hey, check out this video, check out this resource. Tagging us as resources is fantastic.
And again, I know I said that I wouldn't jump in. I always appreciate the tags. I always appreciate you guys tagging me as a resource and like my content as a resource, and same with you. Like, that is always a good thing. So don't stop tagging me. I'm just saying.
We're just not going to come in and tell someone they're wrong.
Right. And I'm not going to come in and be like, all the mean comments that are, you know, bashing you, they're right. Like, you know, so it just, everybody's doing their best.
Yes, but that takes a lot of effort and it's a lot of courage to comment and to spend that time. Like, I do it all the time with chameleon keepers. It is a lot of work. You have to be in the right headspace.
Yes,
if you find yourself getting snippy or sassy, I have to ask myself, when was the last time I ate? So I'll get annoyed. And I'm like, why am I getting so annoyed? I'm like, oh yeah.
Because I'm starving.
Because I forgot my afternoon snack.
I'm a little hangry.
So just like, if you find yourself getting impatient or you don't feel like you're getting through to the person, check yourself, take a breath, and then when you feel good, like, then you can hop back into helping them.
100%. That's a fabulous tip as well.
Yes.
So,
anything else you wanted to add?
I think that was my last.
I'm good on my end. Yeah.
Okay. Well, now on to something a little more girly and a little interesting.
Let's hear it.
So, today we are doing our lovely segment, which we actually kind of haven't done in a minute. I think we like took a little bit of a break on our Are You the Type?
Yeah.
And so this one is, are you the type of girl to put your partner in your Instagram bio?
My answer is no.
I'm also a hard no.
You're more opinionated about this than I am. So just to, like, for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, it's becoming common-ish, depending on like what life stage you're in and like your relationship and whatever else. Basically, in your Instagram bio, I've seen variations. People will like full on tag their partner. They'll do like a little like the lock emoji.
Yes,
you know?
I forgot about it. I've seen that too.
Yeah, with like a little heart or like their initial or like taken by. Some people do anniversary dates.
Some people just do the little heart. You know,
or just like little emoji. I know some people do it with like they'll do like their partner and their kids and like their dog
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
I think it's more like the stickers you have on the back of a minivan.
Right.
Not necessarily your relationship status, even though it's implied in your
But I've seen the emojis that are similar to the minivan stickers,
Yeah. But some people think this is endearing. Some people think this is cute. Some people think this is cringy. That's you.
I hate it.
And
I hate it so much.
This is why it's the are you the type of girl? Because some of you are and some of you aren't.
Yes. And let's be so for real. If this is your type of thing, we are not judging you. These are just like our opinions. Like it is so not an issue. Everybody is entitled to do whatever they want with their Instagram bio.
Of course. Of course.
But I personally, to me, I stopped. So like back in my day, because, I'm 31. So back in my day, the big deal was making your Facebook status,
official.
Facebook
Yeah.
official. Mm-hmm. So like that was like the thing back in my day. And
which I feel like is kind of the same thing.
It's super similar because let's be honest, nobody uses Facebook anymore. I don't use Facebook anymore. It's like where
I use Facebook every day.
Oh, that's crazy.
Because I'm a grandma.
I'm judging you a little for that one.
Multiple times a day. Absolutely.
That
I
is
am
wild.
all over Facebook.
I'm not joking. The only reason I open the Facebook app is simply to look at Facebook Marketplace. That is the only reason I use that
I check
app.
my memories every single day. I scroll my feed multiple times a day.
What?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know this about you.
Why would you know this?
Because I don't get on Facebook.
I'm not sitting around here poking you on Facebook. Remember that when
that was a thing. That was a thing.
No, I'm all over Facebook multiple times. But I have a lot of out-of-state family, so Facebook's primarily how I communicate and stay in the loop with like my like out-of-state family because they're not on Instagram.
That makes so much sense.
That's why I'm
that makes a lot of sense. But
Facebook.
The whole reason I bring up Facebook is because back in my day, that was like the big thing was becoming Facebook official, putting your relationship on Facebook. I am probably, my opinion on this whole topic is probably a little bit tainted by my first real serious intense breakup. And I will never forget how painfully uncomfortable it was sitting on my bed in my very first apartment post-college, breaking up with my boyfriend and telling him that we needed to remove our Facebook statuses.
I've only ever been Facebook official one time.
That was no, I had a couple in high school, but...
One time, all my other boyfriends, we were never Facebook official. And I guess that goes because, like, I'm not the type of girl to put that in my bio. My 2 cents is the people who are closest in my circle are going to know that I'm in a relationship and know that I'm dating. Also, like, if you're following me on Instagram, odds are, like, my guy is going to be on my feed and my story, like, whatever, just kind of, like, organically being posted. And at this age, like, in life stage, if you're posting a picture with someone one-on-one, guy, girl, whatever, multiple times, like in multiple places.
I would assume that's your person. I'm
just assuming you're dating.
I would assume that's your partner.
And that's why people make it very clear in the captions. They'll be like, besties, my best guy pal. Like, they'll make it very obvious that they're, like, not dating. Oh, yeah, for sure. Which is totally fine. But then you can assume otherwise that, like, they are dating. So I think it's a little endearing. Like,
Sure, yeah, I get it. For me, it's the thought process of, like, for me, after that one big breakup that I had, never again did I ever put anyone on anything that I would have to like remove aside from like Instagram photos.
Yeah,
I was like so scarred by that like for me, I'm sitting there and anybody who has it in their Instagram bio, I'm like, that's gonna be real awkward when you break up because everybody's gonna know and everybody's gonna ask you about it and it's basically a public announcement that you broke up. Why were you doing that to yourself?
Well,
right?
I guess you could also, like, being devil's advocate for a second of, like, why are you putting it in your bio in the first place,
That's
right?
Interesting.
If you're, like, proud and excited and you're, like, check out my, like, smoking hot girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, love that for you.
Yeah.
There is a subset of people, though, who are, we're going to call insecure or
controlling,
maybe need that confirmation or don't trust their significant other and they want their profile to be like, hey, I'm taken, so no one else is like reaching out to them. Like, that's when it gets a little slippery and a little sticky, and that's where it gets a little like, why are we putting that
why is
on
that
there?
like,
because then it just feels like a public like flag of being like, I'm in a relationship.
There's
which
also
is, you know, interesting.
There's also like a level of it where I am sure there are plenty of girls and guys out there who have been told that they need to have it in there as like that public flag. And to me, granted, again, I have my own personal experiences that lead me to have these opinions. I have been in controlling crazy relationships before, and if that is something that you are being like almost like forced to do, to like publicize
it says a lot.
It says a lot, and that is a little like, I'm worried for you.
Says a lot. Yeah. That's when like your intention, right? Which I feel like whenever we do any of these types of things, it's always comes down to like, what's the intention behind it. If you think it's cute, adorable, and you're proud of your significant other and you just want to like share with the world, love that, right? And you're excited that you're in a relationship and you want to shout from the rooftop.
Be a proud girlfriend or boyfriend. Like, I love that. That I love.
Yeah. But just when you feel like you have to do it for whatever reason, that's when it gets a little...
If you feel like you're being forced, please send an SOS.
Well, you don't even have to be
I know.
But like, you know what
I
feel
mean.
like that. Yeah. So I'm not that type of girl. You are not that type of girl. Maybe you are that type of girl and would love to hear your adorable story. Yeah. You know, whatever you have in your cute little bio. Yeah. Would love to hear it. But
I will say, I do find it really cute when like new moms will put it in there. Or if like, you know, their kids or whatever. Like, I think that's really adorable. So there's just so many variations to it, I feel like.
That to me is a completely different...
I know it is. it popped into my head, so I had to say it.
Different thing. Yeah. But no, I get you.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts. I don't know. I have mixed feelings, but there's so many different ways you can go with it.
Yeah.
So that is, I think, our last segment.
We're done. We're good.
Done.
Yeah.
I know. Well, is there anything else that we want to close out? No?
No, this room is very warm right now, so I'm
really sweaty, so
I'm good.
We're going to head out. Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you so much, and please do all the things. Give us a subscribe, leave us a review. You can follow us everywhere on the Wild Type Podcast, Instagram, TikTok, all the things.
You name it, we're there. Be nice to us in the comments.
Yeah, that would be really great. Thank you so much.
Take what we said in this episode, and please be nice to us in the comments. I feel like generally our comments are
very nice.
There's just a handful.
Yeah.
Which comes with being on the internet. It's fine.
It is what it is.
It's fine. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you. Yeah, and then give us a follow on I'm Lyssa Lizards everywhere.
Neptune the Chameleon.
All right, and we will catch you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.